in these lives that we're living here, we begin to notice that in every moment we have a choice. We can either accept what's occurring or we can resist what's occurring. And when we resist, it creates suffering, what we might call psychological suffering, emotion, when we resist. So through the years, I've often said that in every moment we can either accept or suffer. Because if we resist, that pulls us into the suffering. If we're accepting what is, there's no suffering in acceptance. And then we can actively navigate whatever's occurring from true acceptance. And this teaching has been offered up by anyone who has really started to take a look at the nature of human life. There will be this that's been offered up through the ages by various explorers of the nature of human expression. In every moment we can either be accepting what's occurring or resisting what's occurring. And so I'm going to now offer up a metaphoric story that gives an example of, well, how do you actually then navigate life from acceptance? What does that even look like? And so in this story, the setting will be a jungle, which is representing life on Earth. So we're all in this jungle. There's 3 different people in the jungle. And these 3 different people are going to represent the 3 different versions of us. In every moment, we can either be one of these 3 or some sort of combination thereof. And the first person in our story is somebody who always resists what is. They never accept. They're in that part of being that I call the wanter, that part of us that wants things to be different, with the idea that if I could just get things how I want them to be, then I'll be okay. And so that part of us that's always trying to manipulate and control and get what we want, with the idea that that will bring the happiness. And so the first person is someone who's always in that way of orientation regarding life events, always in the wanter, always resisting and trying to control and get things to be how they want them to be. That's one way that we can be in life. The second person in our story will be somebody who has heard these teachings about acceptance and resistance, that in every moment we can either accept or suffer. And they've heard these teachings, but they don't fully understand it. They're not quite in a full flow with it. They have a bit of a misunderstanding regarding it, and that'll be our second person in the jungle. And then our third person in the jungle who is someone who has heard these teachings for many years and has lived them for decades. They're a veteran of this wisdom from their direct experiences of their life journey. They've now arrived in this wisdom and they navigate life from this perspective. And so here we go. Here's our 3 people in the jungle. The first person in the jungle, this is our person who's in the wanter, walking along, headed toward a destination, and they step in quicksand. Unbelievable. How come there has to be this quicksand? This is so unfair. Who's to blame? I hate when these things happen to me. This is so unfair. All those kind of things. This particular version of the wanter has very much gotten pulled into the victim. This shouldn't be happening to me. And they're wanting it to be different than it is. And the whole time they're resisting and complaining about it, they just get swallowed up and they die in the quicksand. Glub, glub, glub. Now, we go to our second person in the jungle. This is someone who's heard these teachings, but they don't quite have a full understanding of it yet. This is kind of the perspective of our mind. When our mind hears these teachings, our mind kind of thinks that this is what it would mean to be in acceptance. So our second person's walking along in the jungle, headed toward a destination, and they step in quicksand. Oh, there's quicksand in my jungle. Okay, well, I've heard the teachings that I can either accept or suffer, and if I resist, I'm going to suffer. So I guess I don't want to resist this. I guess I just have to accept this quicksand. Hello, quicksand. I accept you, just how you are. Glub, glub, glub. And they die in the quicksand. Very passive, very doormat. That's not the true meaning of acceptance. Acceptance isn't passive. But this is the misunderstanding. When our mind hears these teachings, our mind often thinks, oh, if I just accept everything, then I'll just get bowled over by everyone and just have to go along. That's not the true meaning of acceptance. So that leads us to our third person in the jungle, who has been living this for decades and decades. So here comes our third person walking along in the jungle, headed toward a destination, and they step in quicksand. Oh, wow, there's quicksand in my jungle. Okay, what are my options here? Because if at all possible, I would choose to get out of this quicksand. So the first thing they come up with to try is to call out for help. Help! Somebody help! Help! I'm in quicksand! Help! And they wait for a bit. Help! Somebody help! I'm in quicksand! Help! But there's nobody there for them. And they accept that. And they say, okay, nobody there for me. Okay, what's my next option? They look to their left and they see that there's a tree with a low-hanging limb. And they wonder if maybe if they lean over a little bit. So they lean over as far as they can and they try to reach the low-hanging limb, but it's out of reach. They can't reach it. And they accept that. They say, okay, I can't reach it. Okay, what's my next option? Because they leaned over for the tree limb that they weren't able to reach, they then notice there's a little bit of solid land to their left. There's a bank of solid land. They're like, oh, let's see what's up here. And so they reach around on the solid land and they find a rock. No, that won't help me. And they accept that, okay? They put that down. What's my next option? They keep looking on the bank and they find a shell. No, I can't see how that would help me. Okay. And they accept that. What's my next option? They keep looking and they find a twig. Ah, nope, I can't see how this would help me. And they put the twig down. Ah, okay. What's my next option? They keep looking and they find something as they reach a little bit further up and they, oh, what is that? Is that a root of a tree or is it a vine? It's a vine. Let me see if I can get my other hand on it. And they reach over and see if they can, and they get both hands on the vine and they slowly pull themselves out of the quicksand. Whew. Now that they're out of the quicksand, they look back at the quicksand and they say, okay, now let me see if I can learn from this experience by seeing if I can tell the difference between quicksand and regular land. So they look at it from all different angles. Takes a little bit of time because it's very subtle. But after a while, looking at it from all different angles, they start to notice, oh, it's a little lighter in color, little different texture. That's what quicksand looks like. Okay. Maybe now I don't have to always step in quicksand. So they now know what quicksand looks like. Okay. Now they decide, okay, let me get some rocks. They gather up a bunch of rocks and they start placing rocks all around the perimeter of that particular quicksand, mark it out and make it very noticeable where it is all around the perimeter so that they won't step in that quicksand anymore. And then they continue on their journey. They didn't have 1 second of suffering over this event. They navigated it from active acceptance, and they're the only one that got out of the quicksand, and they head on their journey toward their destination in the jungle. Now, if we take a look at what unfolded here, everything that they tried that didn't work, that could have pulled them back into their wanter, like when they called out for help and there was nobody there for them. Help, help, nobody, please help. Nobody was there for them. That could have pulled them back into their wanter. Could have been created a whole story. Of course, nobody's there for me. I'm always there for everybody else. And the one time I need help, nobody's there for me. But they didn't let it pull them into that story that would have pulled them into their wanter and created suffering. When there was nobody there for them, they just accepted it. And they explored what would be my next option. Then they tried to reach the low-hanging limb, which they couldn't reach. And they just accepted it. They didn't resist that. It didn't become an event that would pull them into their wanter. Then they found the rock, and that didn't help them. Each one of these things could have pulled them in, like the rock could have been a story like this. Of course, I would find a rock. The one thing that'll just take me down even faster. Of course, I would find a rock. No, they didn't get pulled into those kind of stories. Each thing that didn't work, they accepted it and explored the next option. The shell didn't work, the twig. Then they found the vine and they pulled themselves out. And then from active acceptance, they took time to see if they could learn from this event, to survey and take a close look at the quicksand. And it turns out it was a little lighter in color, a little different texture. And they clearly marked it with rocks from active acceptance, and then they continued on their journey. So what we get to see is in true acceptance, we're not passive, we're very active, and we explore our options. Now, if we take a look at the third person in the jungle, what they were doing all along the way, each thing that they tried that didn't work, they were showing up for the lovely possibility that that would work, but they weren't attached to that outcome being the only way that could work. So they showed up for the lovely possibility that calling out for help would work, but it didn't work. That was the lovely possibility that that would work. Now, if they were attached to that outcome and it had to work, then when it didn't work, that would pull them back into their wanter. And this is so unfair. How come it didn't go how I wanted? So the way that they're navigating this situation is they're showing up for the lovely possibility without being attached to the outcome. Each thing they tried, that was the next lovely possibility, but they weren't attached to the outcome. And because they weren't attached to the outcome, they were willing to then show up for the next lovely possibility. And when that didn't work, because they weren't attached to the outcome, they were willing to show up for the next lovely possibility. So the third person in the jungle navigates life from active acceptance. And active acceptance is not passive, and we're able to then keep exploring our options without being attached to the outcome. We just keep showing up for the lovely possibility without being attached to the outcome. This is true acceptance. Very active. We accept what is and we navigate accordingly. Yes.